Today, we're diving deep into a set of documents that tell a story of power, access, and abuse, a story that reached the absolute highest levels of global society. Let's get right into the files.
See, the story of Jeffrey Epstein, the one these files tell us, it doesn't start where you'd expect. It doesn't begin with an illegal act. No, it began with something way more insidious, something far more powerful: access. And this, right here, this is the absolute core of the entire operation. So you gotta understand, Epstein didn't become this influential figure because he built some famous company or had some big public success. He wasn't a household name at all. His entire power was built on one thing: proximity. Just getting close to money, to power, to influence. While you and I didn't know him, the most powerful people in the world sure did. Presidents, billionaires, royal families. They all knew his name. And he operated like this for decades, basically hiding in plain sight. So why did that change? What finally made people start asking the hard questions? Well, the answer wasn't found in rumors or late-night whispers. It was found in cold, hard documentation. It was found when the official files were finally forced open. So what exactly are the files? I mean, we're not talking about some conspiracy blog here. We're talking about credible, verifiable sources, government documents, court records, financial trails, flight manifests, and maybe most important of all, sworn testimony from victims. Everything we're talking about today is built on that factual foundation. All right, so let's dig in. Let's look at the actual evidence. What do these files really tell us about how this whole operation worked? Right at the center of this whole story is a place, Little St. James, his private island. But in sworn testimony, you'll never hear victims call it a luxury resort or a getaway. No, they had a much simpler, much more chilling name for it: the island. And to get to the island and his other properties, there was really only one way for his inner circle: Epstein's private Boeing 727. A jet that got a notorious nickname from his staff and from the victims. And the thing is, we know who was on that jet. Why? Because of official flight manifests. Look, these aren't opinions, they're not gossip. They are official aviation records. And what these documents show is a steady stream of very powerful people flying not to, New York or London, but directly into Epstein's private world. Some of their names pop up once, but others, they appear again and again and again. And once you were inside that private world, another key piece of evidence comes to light: a handwritten contact book. Basically, his personal index of global power. We're talking about hundreds and hundreds of names. The sheer scale of it is just staggering. And you have to realize, this wasn't just a list of his buddies. This was his safety net. It was the physical proof of his access, and because of that, his protection. So the big question is, how did this massive network actually translate into a system of abuse? Well, when you lay out the victim testimonies side by side, a really clear, repeatable pattern starts to emerge. What's really striking is that the testimonies from different people over different years describe the exact same process, time after time. It was a methodology: recruitment, then transportation, isolation, control, and finally, enforcing silence through threats. And those threats, they were incredibly explicit. This quote, which comes directly from a victim's testimony, shows exactly how Epstein weaponized that network of his. The power of his connections, that was the very tool he used to guarantee silence. And for years, it wasn't just a threat, it was a fact. If you want to see that system of protection in action, just look at the 2008 case. Epstein gets arrested. The evidence against him is overwhelming. We're talking multiple victims, multiple witnesses. And the result? A secret, backroom, non-prosecution deal. He served barely a year in a private wing of a county jail, and get this, he had work release 6 days a week. But here's the most important part. The deal gave immunity to any unnamed co-conspirators. It basically shut down any chance of a wider investigation. The system worked perfectly for them. For more than a decade, that deal held strong. But then in 2019, something finally gave way. The system of protection seemed to crack, and it led to his final dramatic arrest on federal charges. The timeline of what happened next is just incredibly short and incredibly alarming. In July 2019, he's arrested. Just a few weeks later, After being on suicide watch and then taken off, he's found dead in a cell. And this is in one of the most secure federal jails in the entire country. The official cause of death was ruled a suicide, but the circumstances documented that night are, well, they're extraordinary. It wasn't just one protocol that failed. It was a complete simultaneous collapse of every single safeguard. Cameras supposedly malfunctioned. The 2 guards on duty both fell asleep. Mandatory checks were just faked on the logs. And key video footage, it has somehow disappeared. But Epstein's death, it didn't close the book on this. Not at all. In fact, it's what's happened since. The slow, trickling release of these documents that reveals the real unfinished story and exactly why these files are still so important. When you put it all together, the flight logs, the financial records, the testimonies, they all point to one unavoidable conclusion. This was never, ever about a lone predator. This was a protected operation. And that means this whole thing was never really a story about crime. It's a story about power. A level of power and influence so immense that it can operate completely outside the law, in a world where justice is negotiable and silence can be bought. And this right here is the most critical takeaway from all of this. Epstein, the man, is gone. But the network of influence, the legal loopholes, the financial secrecy, the entire system that created him and protected him for decades, that system was never held accountable. It was never dismantled. And that is exactly why the Epstein Files still matter so deeply. They're proof of an invisible world of power that is still hidden from view. And until that world is dragged into the light, the story of Jeffrey Epstein, well, it isn't history. It's a warning.